All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into what's been called one of India's biggest economic game changers in recent years, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code.
Okay, let's kick things off with a really simple but super important question. Say a company can't pay its debts. Who's in charge now? Who calls the shots? The answer to that question is exactly what the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, or the IBC as we'll call it, totally flipped on its head.
So to really get why the IBC was such a big deal, we have to first step back in time. We need to walk through what I like to call India's old bankruptcy maze. And you'll see pretty quickly why a new law wasn't just a nice to have, it was something the country desperately needed.
You see, the core problem was, in a way, simple, but its effects were massive. Before 2016, there was no single rule book for what to do when a company went bust. Instead, you had this confusing, messy patchwork of rules scattered across a whole bunch of different laws.
And just how scattered are we talking? Well, you had the Sick Industrial Companies Act from '85, the Recovery of Debts Act from '93, the Sarfaci Act from 2002, and even parts of the Companies Act. All of them were trying to do kind of the same job, but they all had their own rules, their own processes, and, you guessed it, they often conflicted with each other. It was a total legal mess.
So, what happens when you have a system like that? What's the result? Well, it was exactly what you'd expect. Inadequate, totally ineffective, and just bogged down by endless, maddening delays. To put it bluntly, the whole thing was broken.
And look, this wasn't some new discovery. People knew this was a problem for a long time. Way back in 2005, the Iranic Committee report basically laid it all out. They described the process as, and I'm quoting here, costly, inordinately lengthy, and resulted in almost complete erosion of asset value. Think about that. What it means is, by the time you finally got through the process, the company's assets were worthless. There was literally nothing left to save.
So, it's out of all that chaos that the solution finally emerged, the IBC. Think of it as a brand new, clean rulebook designed to bring order to the mess. Officially, it's the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of 2016.
Okay, so what is this thing really? At its heart, the IBC is a comprehensive law that basically swept up all those old, scattered laws and replaced them with one single, time-bound process. And those two words are everything here: single and time-bound. Those were the two things the old system was completely missing.
But the IBC was more than just a cleanup job. It introduced a really fundamental shift in thinking, a whole new philosophy. It's what's known as the creditor-in-control model. And honestly, this power shift is probably the single most important, game-changing part of the entire code.
So let me break down how that works. Before the IBC, if a company couldn't pay its bills, the original owners, the promoters, they stayed in charge. And, well, they had every reason to drag things out, sometimes for years. But after the IBC, boom. Control immediately flips over to the lenders, the creditors. And what do they want? They want a fast resolution so they can get their money back. That one change completely alters the entire dynamic.
So what was the end game here? What was this new code actually trying to do? The goals were super clear. First, resolve these situations fast so you can save as much of the company's value as possible. Second, actually promote entrepreneurship by making it less of a nightmare to exit a failed business. It was also about increasing the availability of credit. And this is a big one, balancing the interests of everyone involved, not just the owners. Now, you can have the best law in the world, right? But it's useless if there's no way to enforce it. The creators of the IBC knew this, so they didn't just write a new rulebook. They built an entire system around it, a whole new institutional framework, an ecosystem, really, to make sure the code actually worked. So let's meet the key players in this new ecosystem. First, you've got the IBBI. That's the main regulator, the top cop. Then you have the adjudicators, which are special courts like the NCLT and DRT that hear the cases. You've also got a new class of licensed insolvency professionals. These are the managers who step in and run the company. And finally, information utilities, which act as the official data keepers. See, it's a whole system, top to bottom, all designed for one thing: efficiency.
Okay, so we've gone through the what and the how, but now let's zoom out to the big picture. Why does any of this matter? What's the real-world impact of the IBC on India's economy?
Here's the bottom line. The IBC is a massive factor in improving India's ease of doing business ranking. For investors overseas, and for entrepreneurs right here at home, it just makes the whole system more predictable, more transparent. It sends a powerful signal to the world that if things go wrong, there's a modern, effective way to deal with it. It's a proper exit ramp for businesses, which is something every healthy economy needs.
And that really brings us to our final thought for today. Can one law, one single code, really redefine an entire nation's economy? Well, the story of the IBC seems to suggest that, yeah, maybe it can. By fundamentally changing the rules of the game for debt, for risk, and for failure, it's shown us just how powerful a clear, well-designed legal framework can be in unlocking a country's economic potential.